so corrupt that we're not going to give you an A. But she said, you mastered the English language, and mastery is oppression of the people who haven't, and therefore you're really an exploiter. So then what is it that she wants you to do in school? You have to just be mediocre to get an A? Or what do you have to do to get an A? You have to suck up to the teacher. That's what it comes down to, right?
Apparently.
Well, but aren't you in a minority? Can't you say that women have the special right to an A because of past discrimination?
I wouldn't dare.
Well, what do you realistically do in a case like that?
Well, I tried to explain to her, that my purpose of writing is to communicate an idea clearly. And she said, no, you have to, that it's better to be ambiguous so that people can read as many things into it as possible.
That's really wonderful. Then if we don't need education, we just get a whole bunch of monkeys and let them type gibberish at random, and we can spend forever. Now, but this is perfect. Ambiguity. I really thank you, Deanna, for calling in. Ambiguity is exactly one of the key words of skeptics and mystics. They both love ambiguity because the skeptic will say to you, see, we can never know what something means. It could be this, it could be that. The mystic will say, aha, to your reason it could be this or it could be that, but I have the higher code of interpretation. I got the message from the beyond, and I know what it really means. So, thanks for introducing us to that, Deanna, and I don't know, I wish I could give you some advice. I was once in my life graded down because of my views, but not on the grounds that they were too clear, on the grounds that they were too unpopular.
Gotta love it, don't you?
Oh, it's really, and I challenged it all the way to the dean. This was at NYU, and I said, but they asked us on the exam to state your own view, which I did, and they said to me, but your views are way out of line. But
really?
I thought at the time that was horrible, but to be told, it's not that your views are out of line, it's that they're too clear, and that proves you're an exploiter. You have to have the world's greatest self-control not to run raving into the street. Thanks for calling, Deanna. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Lance. How are you doing today?
Hello?
Lance, you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly well.
I just had a question about undiscovered evidence.
Okay.
Exactly what type of argument that was.
I've
heard it used before in terms of, you may discover some evidence that may prove the existence of God. You may, if you look hard enough, maybe we haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
And I think that argument could be used to argue in favor of a lot of premises. What's the fallacy there?
That is a fabulous... Did you get that from a philosophy class, Lance?
No, I was listening to KFI and Ken and Bob, and what about the undiscovered? Maybe there's something we haven't discovered yet.
Let me tell you, that is the standard argument of both skeptics and mystics, because no matter how convinced you are of anything, 2 and 2 is 4, for instance, a skeptic, a real philosophic skeptic will come up to you and say, look, people have made mistakes in the past. How do you know that you didn't make a mistake this time? It looks really clear to you now, but maybe, tomorrow you'll wake up and you'll say, my God, 2 and 2 is really 7.9. Therefore, you can't be sure of anything. By the same token, as you gave as the example, a mystic will say, look, we have no evidence for God or UFOs or whatever, but maybe there will be some tomorrow. And therefore, we have to allow the possibility. In other words, this idea that because there's things we haven't discovered yet, we are entitled to hypothesize whatever we want, opens the door wide open to mysticism and skepticism, and is one of the worst acts that you can take to destroy reason. And what's the answer? The fallacy is the belief that you can hypothesize possibilities without evidence. The fact that we have discovered relevant evidence about something in the past does not mean that about every question, in every situation, maybe we'll discover more evidence that changes our mind later. Sometimes we will, sometimes we won't. You have to go in each case. It's exactly like saying, Lance, you're a human being. It's possible for a human being to commit murder, right?
Yes.
You're a human being. Can I say it's possible that you're going to commit murder? I'm going to hypothesize now that Lance is a murderer. Is that okay?
No.
Well, why not? It's possible. But when you say possible, you mean to the species at large under the right conditions. But when we talk about you in particular in this situation, your comeback is, look, you have no right to say what I may do until you know something about me and the situation and my motive and opportunity and etc. And the same thing exactly is true in knowledge. If I give you an overpowering argument, you are not entitled to come out of the blue and say, maybe you're wrong. Because my proper comeback is, what basis do you have for that maybe? Maybe in philosophy is a fighting word. You can't say maybe freely. You have to, maybe requires proof. And if you can understand that, you'll have all the answers to the skeptics and the mystics, because their whole gimmick rests on, well, let me just take a quick jump ahead. You remember the O.J. trial?
Yes.
You know, the defense, the whole thing of that defense was to rest on maybe.
On undiscovered evidence.
Right. That was exactly this method. And they wanted to reach a skeptic conclusion that you can't be sure of who the killer is. And the way they did it is just trot out a bunch of arbitrary maybes. Maybe there was a conspiracy. Maybe
they were drug dealers.
Maybe they were drug dealers. Maybe. And they didn't give one jot of evidence. Well, we're going to have a whole show on this. And, of course, then the jury said, well, if maybes are allowed, which everybody said they were, why not? You can never know anything. It was a pure exercise in skepticism.
It was a skeptic's argument that saved him.
It was absolutely the skeptic argument that you are giving right now that saved O.J., but it certainly is a threat to the country. Listen, Lance, that's a great question. Please call again. Do you know objectivism?
Yes, I've read several of Ayn Rand's books.
Well, you're a good questioner, and that's a great question. Thanks for calling, Lance. And we're going to go right now to the phone numbers and this message. I'm Leonard Peikoff. It's 12:31, and we're talking about the revolt against intelligence. We have a number of callers waiting, but I promised last week that I would say something about Forrest Gump in regard to this topic. I studied the movie this week, and to be honest, it isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be from the reviews, but it's got a very bad idea, and let me comment on this briefly. Forrest Gump is a hero, a mental retard with an IQ of 75 from Alabama. And his whole life as depicted in the movie, you know, I'm commenting on this because it was such a tremendously popular movie. His whole life was mindless. In college, he's a success because he runs. He runs mindlessly. He doesn't even know the rules of football, but because he can run, he makes a success. In the Army, he salutes mindlessly. He has no clue what the war is about. He gets to see the president. His brain is such that all he can say is, I gotta pee. He learns ping pong, and as is stressed in the movie, ping pong takes no brain, only movement of the eyes. He becomes a shrimp captain, and as they show us, he can't run a boat, and it's excuse me, a plain miracle. A hurricane strikes down all the competition, and then by accident somebody invested and he becomes rich. So the idea is wealth takes no mind. His girlfriend leaves him, and his brilliant response is to run for over 3 years back and forth across the country, and when they ask him why, he says, quote, for no particular reason. This is definitely the life saga of somebody who's mentally deficient. Now, in actual fact, if you were to be realistic, can you imagine how unhappy, how much unable to cope, how helpless, what a failure a person like this would be with this type of IQ? But the myth of the movie is, here are some of the qualities that Forrest Gump had, despite, or perhaps we should say because of his mental retardation. He was innocent, generous, brave, tender, loving. He had a sense of beauty, honesty. None of these things apparently take intelligence. In fact, says the movie, they take stupidity. The intelligent people are bitter, they're hostile, they're untrusting, they're dishonest, but you have the innocence of a babe precisely because you don't have the corrupting faculty of intelligence. Now, This was a widely praised movie, and it is a conservative movie. It's conservative in the sense that it took digs at the Black Panthers and various protest and PC movements, and it's friendly to God. Forrest Gump is religious, and it has a mystical veneer which would appeal to mystics. You know, the feather comes down, and who knows where the feather is from. It's from some other dimension, and life is sheer chance according to whether the feather falls at your feet or blows on. Now, to me, it's a scary phenomenon that a popular, highly popular movie presents an intellectual nothing and romanticizes and glamorizes. It's like the worship of the lack of intelligence. And I think it's a great symbol of what's going on in the United States today, the dumbing down of classes, the continuous attack on the child's ability to think, is bringing up a generation who admires Forrest Gump. Now, you have to ask yourself, do you want your child to be Forrest Gump? Because the schools are really working to bring him out. Now, to his credit, even Forrest Gump didn't want it and was relieved that his child had intelligence. So from this point of view, thank goodness he knew better. I wish our educators did. Now I want to go to Dennis. Are you there, Dennis? Hello, Dennis? Dennis?
Dr. Peacock?
Is this you, Dennis?
Yes.
Okay, what can I do for you?
Okay, in the early 70s in Los Angeles, I belonged to an Ayn Rand objectivist group which disbanded, and I really miss it. I have to say that I lost confidence in Ayn Rand's former psychologist friend. And
so did I, yeah.
Pardon me?
So did I. Yeah.
I've been...
But what can I do for you here on mysticism and skepticism?
Okay, with your question about reason, I think that the Simpson trial is probably the least example of the absence of reason today. I heard more and more lawyers asking, who are you to judge? And you know where that came from. Regarding
that came from the Bible, right?
Pardon me?
That came from the Bible, right?
No, that came from Ayn Rand.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You remember who are you to judge?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was saying the original idea, judge
Right.
not that you be.
Oh, yeah,
not.
sure.
Yeah.
And regarding Mother Teresa, you mentioned Mother Teresa. I think that Ayn Rand's treatment of altruism in the Fountainhead tells all about her. And regarding Shirley MacLaine and Aristotle, finally...
No, Plato. Aristotle did not believe in reincarnation.
Plato, pardon me, yes. You mentioned Shirley MacLaine and Plato. I have there's an old two-line poem I'd like to remind you of that says, said Aristotle unto Plato, have another sweet potato. Said Plato unto Aristotle, thank you, I prefer the bottle. I
never heard that one before. I guess it would be regarded as anti-Plato. Yeah. But since I'm anti-Plato, I will definitely accept that.
I'm going to call the number and see what you have to offer.
Okay, thanks for your call, Dennis. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we have Chuck now. Hi, are you calling from Prescott?
Prescott?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm calling from L.A.
Okay, how are you, Chuck?
Pretty good. I bought your book.
Which book?
The Objectivism.
Okay.
Yes. It kind of left me for a while until I sort of understood what was going on. Looking at the Forrest Gump movie, I noticed how cruel and insensitive. I hate to use those terms of cruel or insensitive, but it showed a lot of ignorance of the other people around Forrest Gump, and how people can be made to be led, how easily led they are when he walked across the country.
Yes.
It showed the asinine. It showed that the masses are asses in a sense. How easily led they are by someone whom they think might have some extraterrestrial or extra sensory powers or something.
So now, what do you make of that in terms of mysticism and skepticism?
Well, the mysticism of it all is that he was brought back, that Forrest Gump was operating from a simple point of view. He simplified, or he operated from a simple point, a simple part of life. He came from from you might say Zen. He just saw things in simple terms.
Well, I don't know if I would quite put it that way myself, Chuck, because